Hey guys, and welcome back. You know what? Let's build an app from scratch. If you're a complete beginner, let's start from scratch, look at the script editor, load the data, and build a dashboard. So maybe you are a new and upcoming data analyst who's just getting introduced to QlikSense. So why not do it? I have a couple of videos which have been super helpful. I've got tons and tons of messages, so I'll link them below. But let's do it again. It's been quite a while, so let's take it from scratch. So let's see where I am. I am in the QlikSense Business Cloud account. So if you don't have access to QlikSense, just log in to Qlik Cloud. You get 30 days free trial, and then you can extend it for another 15 days. So it probably is enough for you to get started, right? This is essentially your console. You can go here to add new. If you already have an existing app, you can upload the app, or otherwise you can create a new app. Now I'll have the QVF file and the data files linked below, and this will be the basic file, right? But there's also so much more you can do with it. Let's start from scratch. Yeah, enough of talking, let's get on with it. So I want a new analytics app. That's what I'm gonna click on, and I'm just gonna give it a name. I'm gonna say create, and now a new app is being created. What do we want to do? We're gonna go get our hands dirty directly. Okay, let's just jump in, guys, and let's go into data load editor here. And this is your script editor, and this is what really scares a lot of people with QlikSense, because they think that, oh my god, we're scripting, it's super hard. No, you know what, we're gonna start from scratch. Let's take it one step at a time. What is this? Well, this is something that Qlik generates automatically. That is based on your location. What QlikSense does is it looks at the language settings in your system, and it says, hey, this is probably what the standard settings should be, so that later on in your functions, these settings are applied, right? For example, the thousands operator, the money format, your date format, and so on. So if you click on the plus here, what happens is you can add new sections. It's basically like adding a new sheet, right? All your data load happens from the first section to the next. So this is your main. Let's just leave it as it is. Let's go to section here and let's give it a name as my data load. Good. I have an empty one. Boom. This is where we're going to script. Don't be scared. Super simple. And QlikSense helps you out a lot. Here you have connections that you can make. If you click on new connections, this gives you access to the different databases that you can connect directly, right? Now, we don't have any connections, but maybe when you're working in your office, you already have a database that you want to connect to a different system, maybe whatever it is. If you're working with Amazon and your data lies there, or you're working with, I don't know, Google Analytics, you have a bunch of pre-built connections that's already, the connectors are already here. So all you need to do is get the right authentication and fill it in and make the connection to your database. And then you can just call in the data through your connector, right? That is, just write a simple SQL code. I have saved the data in my own location, that is in my system. So that's where I'm going to add a connection. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to bring in my data files and place it here and upload it to Qlik so that I can read it, create a dashboard, visualize it, and do my analysis. I'm going to go into the location of the files. These are my files. Good. And now I'm going to add them. So unfortunately, I can't add them all together, but I'm going to add it one at a time. So I'm going to say list customers, and I'm going to click on open. And now it's loading the file. That is, it's basically uploading the file. Now I have the file name. Then I'm going to click on the other one, and I'm going to do this for all of it. Now I have all my files in the connection that I've created, right? So I can select one file and then click. What it essentially does, it helps me load the data. So let's just take the first one, and here I'm going to say select. And what Qlik is doing is it brings in the file, and you have a bunch of options here. That is, if you know that it's a CSV file, which it is, and I can tell Qlik, hey, this one is actually a comma separated or a tab separated or whatever it is. I can actually make some selections over here. I can even tell Qlik, hey, the header is actually not from the first one, but from the second line, and so on. So I have a bunch of easily filterable options over here. And if you see here below, when I load the file, this is the script that's automatically being generated by Qlik. So I don't really need to write down. So a lot of people are super scared that you need to script every single aspect of it. You could if you wanted, but what Qlik does is it actually helps you do it automatically. So now I've just selected the file, and here Qlik says we're going to load. And what are we loading? These are the column names, right? So I have ID underscore customer, I have customer name, unique ID, zip code, city, and etc. So those names of the columns are already here, exactly like SQL, right? You're naming the columns that you want to load, and there's a from syntax here which says the location, the delimiter, and some information about the file name. So the file, what the file name is, what the delimiter is, and so on. So essentially, just like in SQL, where you would say load the column names from the connector that you have done, and you're going to say pull in the column names in SQL, right? It's exactly the same way. Instead, here we're just loading it from CSV. Essentially, I could write this by myself or just say insert script. So now we have loaded this. Qlik has helped us write down all the column names and from which location. Now we could make it a little more simpler. That is, it automatically gives it a name. But instead, over here, I'm just going to copy and do this. What I'm saying is, hey, this is my name of the table. These are the columns that are in that particular table. If I click on load, we're going to load that table. So if I click on load now, what Qlik does is it looks at my file, looks at my load statement, and pulls in all of those information here. If you go to this, you have your sheet, you have your storytelling, and under prepare, you can actually go into your data model viewer. So here, click on plus, and here we see that one table has been loaded. So that's great. And we know the names of the table. So if you click on this and click on preview here, it gives you a little preview on what the table contains. What's the next step? Well, we're going to add all the other tables, right? Because you want to visualize, create a data model and then visualize it. So let's do that. Let's go back here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here and I'm going to click on the next one and select and do the exact same thing. So here I have some geo locations and codes. Let's insert this. Then let's go back and insert order items. Good. Insert it. And let's do that for all of it. So now I've loaded all the tables that are actually there in my file location here. That's what we want. I can even copy and give it a name. So each and every table has its own name. So I'm going to take the name of the file name, right? And give that as my table name. Let's do that. Now I've given all the names and I'm going to click on load. An easier way, you could do Control, Shift, and Enter, and you're going to load it. Or if you have a Mac, it's Command, Shift, Enter. And now if you see the load statement, it essentially says that this is the file name and it's loading into a table called this and the amount of lines that's been fetched. So essentially, this load statement gives you some kind of information on what exactly is happening when you're loading it. That is, how many lines from which file to which table, and some general information on is there any errors, is there any synthetic keys. It gives you an indication on how your load is actually progressing in case you have a mistake. That is, you name a column but the column isn't really there in the table, then the load doesn't really execute. It stops there and tells you, hey, something is wrong, you need to look at it. Okay, so you don't need to. So as long as it says that the app is saved, finished successfully, you're good. But if it doesn't, you're going to see an error statement and it gives you a little bit of a clue on what is really happening. Where is the error? Is it a missing table? Is it a missing syntax or or wrong syntax or whatever, right? So let's say close. Now, if we go back into our data model viewer, voila, something has happened here. That is, you have a bunch of tables. We have an inkling of a data model. Not really great, if I'm honest, because these three tables are just not connected. I think we can make this slightly better. So we need to have a look at it. Okay. So let's see what we need to do. Now, you might be wondering, why is there connections already in some tables, but no connection otherwise? You see, Qlik is kind of smart. So what it essentially does is it looks at the column name, and if the column names exists in different tables and it has the exact same column name, well then Qlik automatically associates it, and it says that, hey, there is a connection between this table and this table, and it creates that connection for you, and that connection is represented by this line, right? You see this key and you see this line, which essentially says that this column name from this particular table has been connected to this particular table and this column name. So you have an idea. But over here, the ones that are singled out, well, these have no connections. That is, there are no column names which are similar. Hence, Qlik can't really associate them and create connections automatically. So over here, we want to simplify this a little bit better. That is, we want one central table in the middle. So essentially, we're going to follow a star schema. That is, have one central table with our main fact data that we say, and then connect some dimension tables to it, right? So if we have a look at it, just a brief overview, we see that this is the orders data. So we have OList orders data set, that we have the order ID, we have customer ID, and we have the purchase timestamp, some dates for the purchases. And if you see over here, we have order ID, product ID, we have the price, and then we have quantity over here, and we have some payment information over here as well. So what can we do? Well, we could combine these three tables, or in other words, we could combine to start with these two particular tables, because it seems like we have similar information here. Now, how do we really look at it? We could do that in the front end. So let's do this, create a new tab. Always easier to have multiple tabs, right? And here I'm going to click on Sheet. And this brings us to the front end. Good. Now, this is a new feature in Qlik. That is, you have an easy analyst mode. That is, if you're a data analyst, you have a file, maybe an Excel file, you just want to quickly analyze, instead of going into the advanced feature, that is this one here, which was the old Qlik, you have this particular easy view. That is, you have some automatic charts here. You have all of these fields, and these fields are nothing but, these are the tables, and these are all the fields that are in the tables, or all the columns that are in these particular tables. And you see them over here, and you have a brief little preview of all the data that's actually available for you. So over here, I could say, show me the payments table, and it brings a little preview about all the data that's actually in the payments table. Cool, right? Now, just having a look over here, we get an idea on what's in the table. So how would you do it otherwise? Let's say we want to do it in the advanced way. So let's go into charts, and over here I have different kind of charts, but the easiest is a straight table. So I'm just going to drag and drop a straight table over here. And let's say, what are my dimensions? So I'm going to look into, let's say, order ID. So I can give it a starting name, that is order. And here it says order ID. And I click on it, and it brings me all the values for this particular field called order ID. And then I can have a look at what are the other columns in the table. So here I have customer ID, I have order status, I have purchase dates, and I could just add them here. So I go here, I say add column, add dimensions, and I say customer ID. So now I know what is the order ID and what is the customer ID. So if I select on one and click on enter, Qlik automatically does a filtration, and it brings you the customer ID. So over here in this particular table, when you have made a selection for a particular order ID, it brings the value of the customer ID. We could do it the other way as well. You see that there's a connection between this order ID. So if I make a selection from this table for one particular order ID, then I could bring in the value from a completely different table, because there is an association between the two, right? So you see that order ID and customer ID is in this table, and now I have product ID here. But I want to know, for the order ID that I selected, what was the product ID, because eventually I want to bring in the product name, which is in a completely another table, right? That is over here. This one has the product name. Okay, So you see that that is why these associations are, that's why modeling the data or building your data model is quite important, right? So let's just have a quick overview of that. Now, what happens if I just add product ID? I go to dimensions and I give it a name. I say product ID, and it brings the value, even though this is from a completely different table, right? That is, it is from this particular table. That is because Qlik over here looks at the order ID. I have a customer ID which is attached to that particular order ID, and I have a product ID which is attached to the order ID as well. So essentially, from this product ID, I can see that, hey, which customer bought it through my order ID. So when I make a selection for a product, I can see how many order IDs are connected to that product and how many customers are connected to that particular orders. So it's an association between the different tables. Good. Let's not overdo it now. Let's get building our model first. So I'm going to go back here. And what I want to do is let's remove the things that we don't want. How do we do that? Now I see that we have order reviews data set. We want to remove this completely because we're not going to look at it. How do you do that? Well, I go into my reviews. This is the table that I want to remove. I select it and I just comment it out. So when I comment it out and I load the data again, changes will be made. That is one thing I want to do. That is, I want to comment this table, that is, remove this table. Second thing is, let's say that we have order ID here, we have product ID here, we have product name, we have seller ID. Haha, wait a minute here. This seems like ID underscore customer because the customer name is here, but I have customer ID here and there is no connection between the two. But I assume that the customer ID is the same as ID underscore customer, right? The reason Qlik hasn't associated it is because because the names are different. Let's have a look. Let's go to our front end. And over here, what I could do is let me create another table. You can just right click, copy, and then paste it. Super simple, right? And I can go back here, delete, delete, delete. I want to test my hypothesis, right? So I could do it in an easier way as well. That is, I could click on this table and I could say preview. And here I see ID underscore customer. I have all of these. Okay, good. And then I could click on the other table that I want to associate, that is over here, this particular table. I click on it and I have the customer ID. If I want to make another, if I want to be sure, here in this table, I would say bring in, sorry, let me bring in the other one that was, the name was ID underscore customer. So I'm just going to load it, ID underscore customer. So we see this. And here I have customer ID from the other table. Let me just copy one of them. So you can right click and copy the cell value. Here we go into this customer ID, we paste it. Yes, so the values are the same, but the name of the column is different. So how do we rectify that? So I go into the table that I want to change it to, that is customer ID is here. And then I go into the table which has the wrong name. Here, customer data set. Here it is ID underscore customer. I can just give this as, hey, Qlik. This column is called ID underscore customer, but name it as customer ID. Good. Now let's see if the association is made. So what have we done? We have a column. We suspect that this column should actually be named as customer ID because we want an association between that particular column and the column in a different table so that we can bring in the information, right? And we have commented out one particular table which we think is not really important. So I'm going to click on load again. Good. And now when we look at our data model, one particular table has disappeared. And now we have the connection here. Fantastic. Because what has happened? Well, now the customer ID and customer ID is the same. So these two tables are connected. Fantastic. Now, what do we want to do? Next step. We see that we have our order ID here with information, that is the product ID, and we have some more price, we have the shipping date limit, we have quantity here, and we have the rest of the information, that is we have the purchase date, we have the delivery date, we have the estimated delivery date in this particular table. I think that these two tables is our main fact table. And what is the fact table? Well, the fact table is where your main values lies, right? So for example, how many quantity, what's the price? These kind of tables are, or information is placed in your central table to which you connect your different dimensions. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to merge these two. If you have worked with SQL before, you already know how to merge two tables. So you're going to do a join. And there are several different ways to do it, different kinds of joins to do it. But in this case, we're just going to use a simple join. Okay, so what's going to happen? Well, what qlik does is it looks at the name, and over here we have order ID and we have order ID in this table. And when we say join these two tables, qlik is going to automatically assume that we are joining on the column called order ID. So let's go here and we have table 1. I'm just going to cut this because I want this to be close to the joining table. So now we have these two. We have this particular table and I want to join this one. So how do we do it? We're gonna remove this, and I'm just gonna say, hey, whatever you're loading here, I want this to be joined. To which table do I want it to join? I want it to join this particular table. On which column? Order ID. But I don't need to mention that because order ID is automatically here. It's named the same, which means that qlik is smart enough to understand that we can join these table through this particular column. If it's SQL, you would have to explicitly say join on table name, column name is equal to, and the other one, right? But in this case, I'm just going to say join, and I'm going to give the table name that I want it to be joined to. So this is the table name here. Good. So let's load it. Let's look at our data model. Now we have one central model here. This one contains most of the information that we're interested in. That is the order ID, product ID, customer ID, a lot of these, the dates, the quantity, the price, and everything. Great. Oh, wait. I think this is a bug. Look at how it's, yeah, I don't know. Qlik, man. Oh, now it's fixed. Yeah, qlik. What's happening? All right. Now let's go back here. And we're going to make some more changes. Over here, this is nothing but geolocation zip code prefix. We have something called, over here, we have customer zip code prefix. That means that for the customer zip code, the geolocation is actually in this particular table. So what can we do? We can connect these two tables, right? So how do we do that? Let's change this particular name, the geolocation. It should be the same. If you see here, it is the zip codes, and this is the customer zip codes. So they look, so if you look at the customer zip code, it's the same as our table here and these zip codes. Good. So we should somehow connect these two. So we could rename this one. Let's change the name of seller ID here. That is the seller ID to seller ID over here. But if you see here, the seller ID values look a little bit different compared to my seller ID over here. Interesting. You know what? We'll come back to it. Yeah. Like the procrastinators that we are, we're going to have a look at it later. Let's make this change first. That is, geolocation zip code should be named customer. So I'm going to go back here, and you know the drill. Just changing the name is super simple. You give it a name as customer, and qlik shows you these are the names that's already loaded into qlik. So it makes it super simple. So you can either copy paste it, or you could, start writing, and qlik gives you a suggestion. So you click on it, and now I have this. Good. And now when I look at the model, it's getting cleaner. It's getting much cleaner. So now if you see here, we have one central table, we have some information here, and I have some product information here, and then I have some more product. It looks like this is a conversion from Portuguese to English. Good. We have another table. This can be merged again. That is, we could do a join over here and we could change this one to seller ID and join it to the table. But essentially, let's start building first and then making it more and more efficient later on, right? So cancel this. Let's go to edit. And now if you see this table, there is no longer a ID underscore customer. That's why this table, it says is invalid. All right, we get it. We get it. Good. Now we are in the front end. What happens in the front end? Let's have a look, right? We have edit sheet here. That is now this I'm in an analysis mode. So I can't really change anything, but I can make selections. The selections that I make is shown over here. If you want to have extra options, you could go to this triple dot, and here you could say select all or select that are excluded, select alternative. You have a bunch of options here, and these are basically filtration. So when I make a selection, Qlik automatically makes the filtration for me and brings in the data through my data model. Good. Let's close this. Let's go to edit. The simple analysis mode, this is a quite a new addition, and I don't use it. I just don't, because it's for very rudimentary data analysts who have just started. But it's probably good to still have a look at it. So let's say you want to add something here. How do you do that? Let's go to edit. You can choose your charts here, select a chart here, and I'm going to click on it. And now I have my table has turned into a chart, that is a bar graph. Here I have a little add item button. So I'm going to click on add, and I'm going to click on this particular selection here, and I'm going to choose the graph that I want it to be. If I want it to be a donut chart, I click on this, and this changes into a donut chart. Now this is a bar chart. Let's change this back into a table. So the dimensions was already there, so it's turned into a table. Here, I wanted this as a donut chart, right? Let's do some simple analysis. That is, let's add. What do you want to add? We have customer city here. Let's add customer city. And then I need to add a measure. And the measure is the calculation. So here I'm going to say add. And we have something called quantity. When I click on quantity, it gives me an aggregation. What are the aggregations? A sum, count, average, minimum, maximum. So I'm going to say sum, just to have a look. So what is this actually telling me? So this now has created a chart, a donut chart with customer city as my dimension and the number of quantity, that is the sum of quantity. So Qlik is looking at each line. It's looking at the quantity and it's summing them up and aggregating it for every single customer city. And that's what this particular chart is showing now. If I want to keep this, I could keep it. If I want to change it, I could make some small changes. That is how I want the coloring. If I want the coloring by dimension, if I want it by an expression, if I want to change the labels, if I want to change the way it is styled, I have some sort of options over here. You have way more options later on in this advanced option, and we're going to look at it, right? And over here, you see here that you have customer city, you have your measure. What if you want to change the measure? Well, you click on this and you change the aggregate to a different aggregate if you want, or you could remove it altogether and add a different measure. That is, right click and you delete it. Now my measure has been removed. I need to add a measure. So I'm going to say, let's say price, and let's say sum of price. And you get a completely new measure here. So this is your super simple rudimentary analysis. Now I could remove this completely, delete it. Let's add a bar chart. I click on the bar chart. Now this is a bar chart. I have the dimensions here, that is order ID, customer ID. Instead, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to add date, that is order delivered date. My measure, what do I want the length of the bar to be? Well, let's still just say payment value, and I'm going to say sum of payment value. So now we have a little bar graph with your dimension as your customer delivery date, and we have your y-axis as your payment value, which is aggregated by the sum. So this is a rudimentary analysis tab, right? Now you could add item below, you could add item to the right, you could add item over here, and now you have 4 different charts. But you can't really do too much with this. So as I said, this is just for somebody to quickly on the go create some charts and analyze it, right? But you're not that. You're a data analyst, you want to be a Qlik developer, so you're going to spend literally minimal to no time in this because you're not a noob, right? Instead, we're going to click on this, that is the advanced options. Advanced options, and now the ones that you have created before is already available here. The charts that you create in the easy mode is available here. You can have a bunch of graphs in one sheet and then click on your sheets and create a new sheet and then create more graphs in this and then create another sheet. So you could separate your graphs based on one is an analysis only for the products, one is only your time-based analysis, one is based on your customers. So you could dedicate each of these sheets to different aspects of your analysis and create graphs that are focused on the kind of answers that you're trying to get from the data set. Now I haven't put in any dimensions and measures, so this is incomplete. This is incomplete. So if I go into edit, now I'm in edit mode. Here I can go now and add measures, add dimensions. I'm going to right click and delete, and I'm going to create it again. So now I've deleted everything. I have an empty sheet. Here is my charts, the different charts that we used. This is master items. We'll come back to it. These are the fields. So exactly like before, the ones that were the fields that were there on the left, you have fields over here. You have your charts. You have some custom options here. That is custom objects about for your dashboard. You have some extensions. You have some extra charts that you could use. You have some variable inputs, a bunch of things that we'll look into it. Let's go back and start creating. Yeah. So let's go into our KPI. I'm going to drag and drop a KPI because this is my first sheet and I want this to be about an overview. I'm going to add this as a KPI and let's add a simple little measure. So here fx is you're going to give it an expression. Since it's a KPI, it's a measure. And since it's a measure, you always need an aggregation. Sum, count, average, minimum, maximum, whatever. So here I'm going to say sum. And inside this, what do I want the sum to be? I want the sum to be the price times quantity. What does the price times quantity give you? That's your sales amount, right? And I want it to be summed up. So based on whatever selections I make, I want this to be summed up. So price times quantity and then sum it up. I'm going to click on apply. Voila. So this essentially is the total sales that I have in all my data sets. Good. I could go back here. I could give it a label. The label is, I say, total sales. Click enter and I have this. I could change the way the number looks. That is, go into number formatting. And here I say number. And I could change the way the formatting is. Now I'm going to leave it into auto. And if I leave it into auto, then it goes into my load main. And over here, the auto is it automatically tells me that if it is 3, then it's a K. If it's 6 digits, then it changes it into M for millions and so on, right? So those things come from your preset values. Good. Now you have your sales amount. I want to see number of orders. How do we get the number of orders? Now we have customer ID, we have order ID. So maybe we can figure out how many orders were actually placed based on the order IDs. So if it's a distinct order ID, then that's one order, right? So let's count it. So how do we do that? Let's go here. I can just right click, copy, paste. I have the exact same KPI again, but this time I'm going to go inside here. I'm going to click on delete. I'm going to go into add. And here I'm going to say, I want this to show order ID. But this is a KPI, so this is a measure. So I need this to be inside brackets. And I'm going to say count order IDs. Good, but not really count all order IDs. I want to count the distinct ones because if one order ID has been replaced several times in a row, then, well, counting it won't give me the total number of distinct orders, right? So I'm going to say distinct here. So what am I saying? Count all the distinct order IDs. And if there's an error in the expression, you see it over here. But now there's no error, so it says okay. That means you're good to go. Good. Apply. Bam. These are the number of distinct order IDs that I have. Go into numbers. Boom. This is the distinct number of order IDs that has been placed. Good. Same drill again. Change the name, number of orders. Great. Now let's continue. Let's add a bar chart. So I'm going to go into my bar chart, drag and drop it. And over here, I'm going to say I want to know my customer city and total sales. So over here, again, sum of price times quantity, right? Now we keep writing this. Instead, we could do this directly in our script. How is that? Well, I go here and I go into the right section here, and over here I have my price here, I have my quantity here. I could do that multiplication over here and give it a particular name. So I have named it as total sales. Why not do that over here, right? So I'm just going to say price times quantity. And as you can see here, it's telling me that something's really wrong. You got to change it. So that basically means that in this case, I have this and I need to give it a name for this particular column. So I'm going to say amount and a comma. The last column here never has a comma. The rest of them has a comma. So I'm going to say I'm directly doing this so that later on I don't have to do sum of price times quantity in the front end. Instead, I can say sum of sales amount because the multiplication has already been done here, right? So let's load it. And once it's loaded, I can go back here. And now instead of sum of price times quantity, I could change this to the new column that we just created, that is sales amount, and I click on enter. Let me just copy this. You see that the value is not changed, it's still the same. Over here as well, I could just enter, and now it's still working because that particular calculation has been done in the backend already. Fantastic. Now I have number of orders, I have the city, and like we can make some changes here. That is, I can click on this and I could go into my appearance, and inside appearance I could change the presentation. That is, I can make this a horizontal bar graph or a vertical. I have the scroll. I can tell whether I want the scroll to be at the end. Why would you do that? Well, for dates, let's have a look at it later. I could change this to add the value labels. Over here, I could go back and say colors. I don't want the color to be automatic. I could change the color from single color to based on the dimension. That is, each value will now have a different color. Give it some more options here. That is the type of color scheme that you want. Legends, that is the name of the city. You could either turn this off, turn it on, or you could go into your y-axis and here you have the label as well as your title. You could change that to labels only. So now your title name has gone. You click on edit, and this time when you bring the cursor here, it highlights the name anyway. So you have your measure, the dimension that's you're highlighting over here, and the value, right? Good. These are some of the options that you could use. Do as you wish, of course. We are just going to do a quick overview on how to do it. For super in-depth video on scripting, going from zero to an advanced user, check out the masterclass. People have been absolutely loving it. It's helped so many people. I get tons and tons of emails. Now we have a little bar chart here. Fantastic. Now I want to add a scatter plot. So I'm going to take this scatter plot, put it here. Let's make this bar chart like this. Let's add the, now I'm going to go back to my chart and I just want to change the color. Okay, I want to make the color as automatic here. And inside this, I have my bubble. What is the bubble? Let's say product category name in English. And on the x-axis, I want sales, that is total sales. So sum of sales amount. You know what? I'm a bit tired to all the time go in and say sum of sales amount, sum of sales amount, sum of sales amount. Super annoying, right? Why not have it in one place and then apply it everywhere else. Because this looks like a KPI that I'm going to keep using, a measure that I'm going to use over and over and over again. Is there a simpler way to do it? Yes, there is. So let's click on apply. Here I have number of orders. I want to put it in, what's the sales in your x-axis and the number of orders in the y-axis. And I have that particular measure here. But again, I'm going to copy it, paste it. Oh my God, so freaking annoying to do it over and over again. And since I'm a lazy SOB, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into master items here. You have dimensions, you have measures, and visualizations. I'm going to go into measures. Let's look at the other ones later. And here I'm going to say create number of orders. Expression is my count distinct order ID. I'm going to click on apply. I'm going to say create. So now I have a measure here. And if I go to add, this is a measure. So you see here first a number of orders has been already created. It's a measure and it's coming here way before the field. So this is a master item. Now I click on apply and it's added. Simple, huh? So now this sum of sales amount, instead of doing this again and again, maybe I could do the same thing with sum of sales. Yes, I go into create, I say total sales, I give it a name, right? I say total sales, I go into expression, I paste my expression here or write whatever expression it is. And then I could do much more. That is, I could give it a particular color as well. Let's do that and say create. And now I have total sales here. None of these have changed because I haven't applied it. So let me go back here. This is sum of sales amount. I'm going to delete this and I'm going to add, voila, over here you see that sales has been added. Now you could change it just by moving it over here. And I'm going to change that back. Let's go here. This is my regular measure that I wrote by hand. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to say add, and I'm going to just click on my master measure that I just created. So let's say sales. And if you notice, the color changed. Why is that? Because the color that I've applied to the chart is auto, right? That is just derived from my master measure. And the master measure, I've given it a particular color here, so it automatically brings it in. Cool, huh? And let's do the same over here. Let's go back here. Let's go delete this, add, and I'm going to say total sales. And you see the color has been applied here as well. So this is the beauty of having a master measure. That is, if you have a bunch of charts which are dependent on one particular measure, if you have the master measure, it just gets applied everywhere and saves you tons and tons of time. Awesome, right? Let's have a look here. If I change the number format, voila, now the number format has changed in all the charts that has this particular measure. Fantastic, right? I'm going to just change this back because the numbers are too big. It's hurting my eyes. So let's go back to auto here. Save. Good. So that's your master items. Cool, right? So now you have a little chart here, cool little scatter plot. You have some KPIs and you're well on your way. I like it. Good. Next, what are we going to do? I'm going to go back here. Let's look at the model and you see these two, right? That is, you see that you have category name and category name English, and you have product category name here. That means that the name is in a different language and that we have a table which converts it. I wonder what we could do to merge these two tables. Join? Yeah? If you said join, that's exactly right. We could join these two tables, right? But if I see here, I only have two values. There's a different thing that we could do, which I'm going to show you now. That is, we could map it. Mapping is a one-to-one function. That is, one particular value can be mapped with another value. So instead of doing a join, it's exactly the same thing. That is, I'm going to join these two tables, but instead of using join, I'm going to map it. If we were going to join it, what would we do? Well, I would go back here. This is the product category name, so I'm just going to copy it, right? And here is the product category, and this is the product category name. So I want to join these two tables based on my column called product category name. So how would you do it? I would remove this, and I would say join it to which table? This particular table, right? Now you could either join here. I could also use a left join. So if what would happen if I use a left join, all these values would remain the same. Then I would then qlik would, if it finds a category name which exists in this particular table as well, then it would take this and left join it, right? That's what a left join does. If we load it, let's see if that works. Let's go back here. And now we see that that particular table has disappeared and we have our product category name here. It's been added to this particular table that you see over here, product category name, English. Fantastic, right? So you have joined it. So we have done a left join as well. But I promised to show you something else, which I quite often use, can be faster than join as well, and that's called mapping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this. Here, let's add a new section and let's add this as mapping. And over here, I'm going to paste this one and I'm going to give the mapping a name. So I'm going to say map prod cat ing. Mapping only works with two fields. Remember that. That is, you need a key, that is as key, and you need a value. This is our value. So what I'm saying is in another table, what I'm going to say is, hey, every time you find this key, replace it with the value. Boom, right? That is mapping. This is a normal load. Instead, I'm going to tell qlik, this is not a load, this is a mapping load. A normal load, what does qlik do? Well, in a normal load, the tables remain. In a mapping load, the table is stored in memory, and once the mapping is done, that table disappears. That's what we want, right? We don't want this particular table here, that is the product name translation table, since we had it before. We didn't want it. This went away when we did a join because we merged the two tables. But if we have the two tables, then both the tables are going to be there. So now I'm going to do a mapping load with a key and value from this particular table, and I'm going to map it. So I'm just going to copy the name of the map. Let's go back here. Where are we mapping it? We're mapping it into this particular table, right? That is the table that we did our previous join. Which particular column? Product category name. That is my key, product category name. Good. So let's leave this here, and I'm going to say apply, and qlik gives me an option, apply map. Good. What is the syntax? I'm going to put the mapping name, which is the map function, that is the name of the mapping. Good. Apply map called this. Where do you want to apply it to? What is your key? Well, the key is your product category name. Good. So comma product category name. What do I do if I don't find anything? Then just make it as null. Okay. And give the column a name. What is the column name? Let's give it the same name as it is. That is the value, right? So every time you find the key, which is your product category name, it's going to map the value to it. Good. As let's say this, and give a comma. Now we are essentially going to do the same thing as our little join. Click on apply, and now we go back here. Voila, exactly the same thing. That is, we have added our category name English to this particular table by mapping it instead of doing a left join that we did. Now you guys know join, you guys know left join, you guys know mapping, you know how to remove tables, add tables, change the names. Getting a hang of it? Yeah? Good, 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 good. All right. Where are we? We are over here. We have added this. You know what? I'm going to go to another sheet here. And in this sheet, I'm going to add a bar graph. And over here, I'm going to say order purchase timestamp. And here I'm going to say sales, because I want to see what my sales is over time. This looks kind of weird because this is all timestamps, right? Now, I have a function, that is, I could use a function called date and remove the timestamp. Let's do that as step number one. So I have my purchase over here, and instead I'm going to say from this purchase, which is a timestamp, extract the date for me, please, qlik. So qlik has a function called date, and now when I click on apply, you see that the timestamps are gone, but you still have the date. I want to aggregate them. So let's put it over here. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to make some space. Let's make some space over here. In this case, here I have the date, right? Here I want to aggregate it based on the year. And I'm going to add another function called year. So what am I doing now? Well, I'm extracting the year from the date that I just created. Click on apply, and now I have the dates, or now I have the years. Perfect, right? So this is what I really wanted. That is, I wanted to see how my sales are progressing based on the years. So I have extracted from my timestamp, I've extracted the dates, and I've extracted the year. Fantastic. But it doesn't look quite right, if I'm completely honest with you, because this is 22, 22, 23, 22, 2023, 2022. No, no, no. We want this to be chronological, right? Right now it is sorted based on the sales. That is descending order of sales. So here I could go into sorting, and here I can tell Qlik right now it's sorted based on total sales, but I actually want it to be sorted based on my time, that is chronological. So I just move this up, and now if you see that this is sorted chronologically. Still a little bit hard. Let's do the same thing here. That is here as well. I want it to be chronological. So 20, 21, 22, 23. I have a dash. That means that sometimes we weren't able to extract the year. I don't care. So here I could go into my dimension and say, do not include the null values. Good. Now we have our date here. What if we want to aggregate this? I want this to be months and I want this to be years. Interesting. Let's go back to our table. Let's go to the table where we have our date, that is order purchase timestamp. And over here, I'm going to create a field. Exactly what I created in my front end, I'm going to say year. Tell Qlik, hey, take this field and from this field, extract the year for me, will you? I'm going to name this as year. Good. Next, I'm going to say, I'm going to take this field, stick with me here, right? And for every timestamp, bring me the month start of it. And once I have the month start, what I want to do is actually change this to date, and I can tell Qlik the format that I want. That is, do I want the format to be year followed by month followed by date, or do I want the format to be date followed by month followed by year? Do I want the month name to be in alphabets, characters, or how do I want it? So I can essentially tell Qlik in which kind of format I want my date. Now I want to aggregate it year and month. So what I'm doing is I'm taking every single day, and then I'm converting that to the start of that month, so that I can then aggregate it and use that as my dimension, and I see month to month to month progression. So here I say, take whatever timestamp you have, change that date to the first date of that month, and then remove the date and just give me the year and month. So YYY-MM. And I'm going to name this as, oops, close the bracket, name this as year month. It's going to become super clear for you in just a second. So I'm going to click on apply, and where were we? Here. Right. And over here now, instead of doing this year, I could just go to add and start typing year, and I already have a year function. Why? Because we created it, right? Now I'm going to say year, and we get the same particular output. Great. Then I'm going to go into here. Over here, I'm going to say, instead of this, I say year month, which I just created. Voila. And now instead of the entire date, what I've done is I've aggregated all my sales for the entire month into the first of that month, and then just taken away the date and had just the month and year. So I can plot and see how has my sales progressed based on month to month to month for the different years, right? So again, you see that the sorting is wrong. So let's go back into sorting. Let's put the month here, and now you see that the sorting is in the right way. Now, what if the user wants to make a selection and only look at 2023? They can select on this particular chart, and what if they want to change it? They can click on this and click on 2021, and then they can click on this and click on 2022. But what if this isn't here? Well, we could add filter panes, right? So we could go into charts, and I think it's like a slicer basically. So you could go here and you have filter pane, drag and drop the filter pane here. Over here, I'm going to say, hey, let the user make selections for year, and let the user make selections for year month. Also, let the user make selections for different cities and customer state. Drag it out here. Good. Now you have selections added over here. What does this mean? This means that users can come here, and if they are only interested in one particular month, they could click on this particular filter pane, select the month that they want, and click on enter, and your graphs would be filtered for that particular selection that the user makes. Cool, right? Now you have used some date functions. Now, again, super rudimentary. I go super in depth in the masterclass, so check that out. But this is a super rudimentary way to manipulate the data. So we have seller ID here and we have seller ID over here. But it seems like the two are different. That is, if I look at seller ID here, it seems like I have seller ID is equal to and the ID. But when I see here, it's only seller ID. I mean, you're going to spend so much time cleaning data. So we might as well look at least one function. Now we have hundreds and hundreds of functions that you could use. We have a whole section on data cleaning in the masterclass. But now let's do a simple cleaning function which can help us extract the ID out of this and then rename our table name or our column name so that we have a connection and get the basically the zip code and the seller city and stuff, right? So how do we do that? Well, now I have my table here. This is the ID. And here I'm going to say as seller ID. So I want to first change the name as well. But even if I change the name and the connection is done, it won't be the same because if you see here in this table, the format is seller ID is equal to. So this particular crap over here, we want to remove it. That is everything after the equal to sign. To equal to sign is just complete rubbish. And then we want the ID because if we see here, we have our seller ID over here. That is just the ID. And over here, it is seller ID is equal to and the ID. So we want to extract this ID out based on this particular equal to sign. So we could use this function called SUBFIELD. So SUBFIELD, I mean, you guys are learning so. I did not plan on doing so many functions. I thought of giving a super quick overview, but yeah, I mean, good, right? You're learning a lot of things. Essentially, what I'm saying is, hey, subfield for the column name called seller ID. This is the original column name, and I'm telling Qlik what is my. It's the equal to sign. So I'm telling Qlik, hey, look for the equal to sign in the particular column called seller ID. And once you find the equal to sign, what do I want it to do? Well, I want it to ignore the first part, that is the part before the equal to sign. So this is 1, this is number 2, because this is the equal to sign. So everything after it is 2, everything before it is number 1. And I'm just going to tell them bring in only the second part, remove everything else. So here, subfield, field name, the field that I'm looking at, that is the character that I'm looking for, which is an equal to sign. And every time you find it, bring in the second half of it and call that as my seller ID, right? So then essentially what happens is it's going to look into the equal to sign and bring in the second half of it. So let's load. And now when we look at our model, booyah! You see here, we have cleaned it. Fantastic. And we have a connection now. So for each of our order ID, we know the seller ID and the information of the seller. Good. So we could essentially create a table here to show where is most of our sellers coming from. So if I create a bar chart and here I say seller city and I say total number of sales. So we know that even the seller city seems to be most of our sellers are coming from Sao Paulo. Good, good. So we have done quite a bit, right? Quite a bit. Let's do a part 2 where we really look at the dashboard. But for now, I just want to close this with a map. So I'm going to create a map here and I'm going to drag and drop a map here. if you have country names, if you have city names, what you can essentially do is you could automatically Qlik extracts the latitude and longitudes. Okay. But over here, in our case, we have something called our geolocation data set. That is, we have the zip codes, we have the latitude, we have the longitude, we have the city name, right? So essentially, we could use this as our information to pinpoint and to plot it in the map. So how are we going to do that? Now, if you have the latitude and longitude, you could create something called make geo point or geo make point. I always get that confused. Geo make point. And what are we doing? I'm going to say, hey, make a geo point that is combine the latitude and longitude into one particular field so that I can plot it in Qlik. So I'm going to say make geo point geolocation lat, comma, geolocation longitude, and we're just going to name it as geo underscore key. And then the column name. So in this case, geolocation city, I want to tag this one as my, well, let's say we're going to tag it as our geo names so that later on in the front end. So if we look over here and we go into fields, you have no field that automatically has a little globe next to it. So if you have a field with a globe next to it, you realize that Qlik automatically looks at it and says, hey, it understands it as, hey, this is probably a field that can be used for maps, because Qlik is looking at the OpenStreetMap data, and it says that, hey, maybe we could plot this as a country, as a city, as a state, because Qlik is recognizing it as something that has a geo point. But right now we don't have any. So what we're going to do is we're going to plot and say that the particular field that we're looking at is actually a geo location. So what have we done? We have made geo make point, and then I'm going to say here tag the field. And what is the field name? I'm going to say geolocation city, and I'm going to say tag the field geolocation city with geo name. Now, you might be a little bit lost. You know what? Don't worry about it. So basically over here, you have geo make point, and you're creating one particular field with both the latitude and longitude. And then this particular city, I'm naming it, or I'm tagging it with the geo name so that Qlik recognizes this as a city. Let's load it, see what happens. Now it's loaded. Let's go to the front end. And now when I look, the globe has appeared. Booyah! That's the way. So Qlik now, I've tagged this as a geo name, which means that I could use this later on. So now here, I'm going to click on the map. I'm going to go into layers. Here, I'm going to add the layers. Now, if it's a country, I would have added a area layer, but we have latitude and longitude. So it's not really so it's better to plot a point layer, right? Because it's a city. So I'm going to say city, and here I'm going to give this as my geolocation city. All right. Qlik automatically plots it. Why? Because it's bringing in the name. So you see that actually the data here is only from Brazil, but Qlik is plotting it all over the world. Why? Because it's thinking that, oh, this particular name, maybe it's from this country, maybe it's from this country, maybe it's from this country. But it's not really right, because we are going to go into location, and here I'm going to say location field is actually the one that we created. And what did we create? That was the geo key, right? So we created the geo make point. That's the geo key. So here I'm going to say geo key. And now if you see here, now it realizes that, oh, okay, I shouldn't just bring in the name based on the name of the city. Instead, I should bring in the location based on the geo key. That is the field that I created using geo make point. That is the latitude and the longitude. Now you could, instead of using geo make point, you could click on this and automatically give the latitude and longitude, because we were lucky we had it, right? So we have this location field. I'm going to say, hey, bring in the location from here. Good. Now it seems like we have two outside. I don't know if you see here, it seems like we have two over here. I don't really know. I mean, Qlik is like you in a relationship. I mean, you can never be completely right. That's data for you, right? You're as good as Maybe there was wrong latitude and longitude somewhere. Now, fantastic. What else can we do? Well, we could go into our map settings, make some changes here. We won't do that right now. But what I do want to do is to actually make some kind of changes. That is, it's just here, so it doesn't really make any kind of sense, to be honest. I'm going to go into my layer, and here, size and shape, I want this size to be based on my total sales. So now the size of the bubble is based on my total sales. So the bigger the bubble, more the sales. And let's change in, we can even change the shape. Let's make it a triangle. We can go into colors, and here colors as well. We could give it based on my dimension. That is, each of the city has a different color, you see here. But what if we want it by measure? Here I'm going to say, and the measure is again total sales. So now the color as well, that is, darker the color, that means more the sales. Good. It seems like the sales from different regions are not so, how do you say, distinguished from one another, right? You see that most of them are in the same shade, but at least it gives you an idea of what's really happening. So now I have size and shape here. Now you have your map. Fantastic, right? So you have learned how to extract your, do a bunch of operations, do some cleaning, create a map, and I think you're well on your way. I mean, this is freaking awesome, guys. Really good work. Let's do one small thing, year and year month. Maybe we could make this into a drill down. How do we do that? Let's go into our master items. Let's go into dimensions. Let's go into create. And in here, I'm going to say drill down. Here, I'm going to say year. And then I'm going to say year month. And you could change this in the order that you want the drill down to be in. So I'm going to say year, year, month, and say year drill and click on create, close. And I'm going to go ahead and maybe here, and I'm going to change this from here. I'm going to delete it. Just like how you had a master item, now you have a master dimension. I'm going to go into add, and this is the newly created drill down. You see that this sign shows that it's a drill down. You click on drill down. What really happens now? Let's take this away. Now, every time I click on here, this particular chart has drilled down to year month. Cool, huh? So you could have continent, country, city, drill down and use that in your map. Here, year, month, or year, quarter, month, week, day, you could have that as a drill down and you could use that as your dimension. So plenty of ways. Now we have learned how to create master dimension, master measure. One last thing, you could right click, add to master items. So I'm going to give it a name, year, sales, and click on add. And now I have a master visualization. What does that mean? If you have one visualization, for example, a KPI that you want to keep using in different sheets, I'm going to go back here. This is a new sheet now. Drag it and drop it. Voila, you directly have a master visualization as well. So, all right, all right, all right. What are we going to do next? We're going to look into some really cool things now. That is how to customize the dashboard a little bit, make it look a little more cooler. Why not? Let's finish off with that. And what we're going to do here is, so this is one way, right? Now you have a master visualization that you could, if you go to any other sheet and you easily want to put in the same visualization that you just created, you could go into your master items, go into your visualization, and drag and drop it, and there you have it. Voila. Now, you could do the same thing for your filter panes. That is, what exactly do? You want to let your users have access to make selections, right? And we do that using the filter panes, as we've seen. So I drag and drop the filter pane, and here I tell them I want the users to be able to select the year. I want them to also be able to select your month, just in case somebody is super into, well, they want to do an analysis just based on the questions that they have, right? And I also want them to be able to select a city. I want them to be able to select, let's say, a product category name and a bunch of other things. So we have all of these here, and these are common selections that I want them to be able to do. So let's make it smaller here, or let's make it in a line and drag and drop it here so that they all come in one line. Good. So I want them to be able to make the selections in every single sheet that we have. Way that you could do that, now I'm gonna make this, and then I'm gonna go and over here, let's take this away, let's paste it here. This is what we already have. And now I go back here and I paste it in my third sheet. And then all of a sudden I realize, oh, wait a minute. Now, somebody who's using my app, as always, the users, they always want to come back and say, oh, yeah, but you know what? We actually don't care about your being first, but we really want our, let's say, customer name as well. And that should be the number one selection. And they want that on top. So now you have to go in and make the change. So you go back here and then you got to select this. And then we're going to add, oh, cumbersome, right? So how do we make that simpler? Well, essentially this particular thing that's going to be in every sheet, if you're going to reuse, so this is a simple rule of thumb, right? So if you are going to use something more often than not in different sheets, then just make that a master measure or a master dimension or a master visualization. So basically anything, you add it to your master list. So here I'm going to go to edit, right click and say add to master items. And I'm going to say my filters, give it an add. Now this is a master item. Great. So all I could do is now I could go back here. Let's remove this. This is regular. So let's remove this. And now I have under my master, my filters is under the master visualization here. So let's go to master items, visualization filters, and I'm going to drag and drop that one. So let's go back to our first sheet and do the same. And I have the filters. I'm going to drag and drop it here. Exactly the same, right? Now we have this. If your user comes in and says, hey, you know what, we changed our mind. Yeah, of course you did. Of course you did, because you want your year and then your month first, and then you want the customer name followed by the product. Done. And voila, when you go to your next sheet, it's already the way that your user wanted it. And you go back here and it's already the way. So, it super simplifies your work, right? Because, well, let's face it, the people who order the apps, they can be so cumbersome and annoying sometimes. It's not their fault. I mean, they're just doing their job. And you're doing your job as continuously developing the app. But let's just make life easier for yourself and for everybody. Why not? So you just don't reduce the number of manual work. All right, let's get on with it. I'm going to stop blabbering now. And now we have this. As I said, let's focus this particular sheet. Let's make it a little bit on products and let's see if we could, how much can we push it? Like, can we make it a little bit better? So we have this right now, right? I'm going to drag and drop another one. I'm going to drag and drop this one here. And I'm going to add, let's say, product category name in English. I'm going to say total sales kit. And I'm going to still say year month as well. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say year month. Now this is the grouping. Instead, I want the year month to be there and the product name as my bars. Now, what I really want is what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into appearance and I could change this from grouped to stacked. So now I see the stacked version. That is, I want to see the progress of different categories over time. And that's why I'm making this as stacked. It's a pretty cool way to see it. And we can customize this. Yep. Before that, let's look at what are modifiers. That is, if I go back here, now we have a sum of sales based on year month, right? But what if we wanted to see an accumulation or moving average? Now, there are ways to calculate it. There are tons of functions inbuilt in Qlik. For example, you use above, you use range sum, you use the row number. So you could do all of those. But what Qlik has actually done is it's made it super simple. That is, you go into your measure, and over here you have something called modifier. If you click on the modifier, you get a drop down. And inside the drop down, you get accumulation, moving average, difference, relative numbers. So if I say accumulation here, this is basically, it is the running total. Now you could do running total in different ways. I have a lot of videos on it, You could write down exactly how you want the running total by using different functions like row number, above, range sum, and all of those things. But if you want a simple way, you have a modifier here which shows you the accumulation. So you could just change that to whatever you want. Pretty cool, right? Full range, custom. So I'm going to give it a full range accumulation. So now we have a running total of the sales that we have. So I just wanted to show you that. So you have a modifier there. You also have an inbuilt trend line if you really want to use. So if you could click it, you could go back here. And this trend line is not there for all kinds of charts, but it is there for some of the charts. So if you go here, you have trend lines. You say you add trend lines, and you can select the kind of trend line that you want, and you basically see it here. Of course, this is skewed now because it's accumulation, right? All right, so let me just turn this off. Done. Good. If you remember, we had this in the other chart. So if you go back here, this one is also modified. So just make sure that if you make a change, it's not linked. Next, now I'm just gonna, you know what, let me just delete this. Now I'm gonna work with our product. Good. Now we could go back inside here. We could go to appearance. We could turn off the legend, and we could make other modifications. For example, colors. I would turn this one off. I would still say by dimension, and then it gives me a color scheme. So I could use a little color with a little more variance. So I could use this one here. Good. Next, what I do is I could go back. Now I'm going to show you something cool. So we have this. Next, I want the entire background to really pop. I don't want this regular QlikSense background that we have here. One way to do that is you could go back here, you could go to settings, and here you could choose a different theme. Now you can download different themes, install it, and use those. So it comes in inbuilt with a couple of them. So it changes the look and feel of your app. So you see here the way it is. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one and I'm going to go into edit, and I'm going to click on the sheet, and inside sheet properties, I could go back here and go to styling, and inside styling, the background is auto. I turn this one off, and I could give this a color, or I can even add an image. That's pretty cool, right? So I could go back here and say, hey, I want the entire sheet to have a particular background. So if I'm going for a particular aesthetic, then I could add it here. So now I have this. Oops. Good. Now, if I wanted, I could even go into my sheet and I could even add an image. So you need to upload an image that you have. And now I have an image in the background. So you see what I mean? Like you could really make your dashboard look and have a particular aesthetic. Now I don't want this because the image is a little bit distracting and it's not the image that I want. But you can see here that you could do a lot more to improve your graph. And these are things that people don't really do. So now I have this background. Then I'm going to go into my chart. So this is my chart. And inside the chart as well, I could do a lot more. For example, I could go into presentation, I could go into styling, and here I can change a lot of things. So these numbers, the fonts, so I can go back here and I can change the font type. I could even change the font color. And of course, over here, I could go back into my background image and say, what is the background that I want? So I'm going to take this one for now, just for fun's sake. I'm just teaching you all the things that you could do, right? I'm going to go back into styling, and these are the styling in general. That is the one over here, right? But I could also overall go into the chart, tell QlikSense how I want these particular bars to be, how wide I want them to be, how narrow I want them to be. Do I want an outline? Yes. Let's say that I want an outline. Let's change the color of the outline. And we could also go into your labels over here and change the way the labels look and the colors of the labels as well. So it makes it pop a little bit. Good. All right, now we go back here and you have your graph, which is looking a little too flashy for my liking. Not really the aesthetic that I want. Now let's go ahead. What I want now is to add a table. Now we have seen how to add a regular table, right? So we add a table, then we add the fields that we want. Now Qlik has actually made things a lot more easier. That is, what if we want the users to be able to select the columns based on the fields that are actually available in the data set? Now what we could do here is we could, for example, go into your custom objects, and here you have extensions, that is the extensions that you download. You have your visualization bundle, and then we have your some extra charts. And one of the charts that we'll use is this straight table. Drag and drop it here. You can add the columns. So we're going to add the straight table here. And in the straight table, I go into fields and I select the fields that I want. Go into measures, add the measures that I want. And now we have a table. Let me change the table view a little bit. Let's make it like this. Next, what we could do is we could enable chart exploration. So this is something super new and a really well welcomed feature actually. So before you needed to use a variable and a drop down, and I have a bunch of videos on how you could trick Qlik basically, so that you could give your users ways to select an ad hoc report, right? If you want to create an ad hoc report only based on fields that the user really wants to see, you needed to get a workaround. I have some videos on it, how to get a workaround. But in this case, what Qlik has done is very recently they've launched this particular feature where you could let your users automatically select the fields based on their choice. So you choose this one called Enable Chart Exploration. Now when I say OK, you see here, now there is a table. The user comes in and says, yeah, but I don't really want to see all of this, if I'm honest. I want to see the sales, but I only want the fields that I actually want is just this, and this. Yep, just show me these. And your table automatically filters. Cool, right? But you can, of course, go ahead and modify this a little bit. So you can go into your presentation, go into styling, and do the same changes that you actually made previously. So you could go into charts, and here I'm going to put row hover, and I could change the hover color, hover font color to white. And now when I move my mouse around, you see a hover. Now, unfortunately, I think with this particular chart that is inside your custom objects, you can't really change the background of it. Yeah, you can't really change the background of it. That is unfortunate, because if you go to a regular chart, that is, we go here, and now, by the way, the changes in background and adding an image to your background, it's not available in all releases. It's quite new. So I know for a fact that it's in cloud, and I'm not really sure in Qlik Windows Enterprise if it's really there. So you need to check. Maybe you don't really have that option. That's because the Qlik version that you're running doesn't really support it. Hopefully the support comes out soon, but the cloud versions, all of it have it. So if you're running business cloud, you have the option to change the background colors and add background images. So if I go into my regular chart here, I add a regular table. Here I say city, customer name, add some measures. Good. And now I click on this and I go into my appearance, styling again, and here we have a lot of options. Here we have the background color and image option. So here, if you want, I could change this entire one to black, to match it, I could add this. However, and I could also change the content because the content can't be seen anymore, right? So I could change the content color to whatever is a little more suitable. Let me even change this too. Yep. So these are the two different kinds of tables that you can actually have. Now, I like this because you're kind of giving your users access to the fields, and they can really choose in case they want a really big table with a lot of fields. They have the option to do it. Good. So let me take this one away. Let me make this a little more smaller. And let's add a really cool little chart that is the Sankey chart. So I'm going to go back into my custom objects, click visualization bundle, drag and drop this Sankey chart here. I can add dimension. One of the dimension I'm going to add is my product. So let me add the product name. Then I say customer city, and then I say total sales because I want to see what are my products. So if I select on a particular product, I want to see which is the top city that most people are ordering that from. So now if I click on edit sheet again, so this becomes normal, good. And now I make a selection. So I've selected one, that is air conditioning. And here I see that this is a much bigger graph, right? So over here, the bar is much thicker here. So essentially, each of these connections is based on the number of total sales. Good, but maybe this is a bit hard to see. So let's go into edit. Let's go back here. Let's go into sorting and clear this. And here I say it's automatically now in descending. So now if you click on edit and I've selected a product category, I see that the top city has been sorted on top, and next is the second most, and then it's descending based on the total sales. It's perfect. That's exactly what I want. So it gives you like a nice little breakdown. I think I really love this chart. It also makes your dashboard look pretty cool. So it shows you a connection between your two different dimensions based on one of the measures that you have selected. Cool. All right. We are getting there. But there's one thing that I want to show that is one of the most important aspect of QlikSense, and that is called set expressions. You might have heard of it. Let's do a very, very, very simple version of set expression and see what that actually means. So what a set expression is you're selecting a set data from your entire data set and asking Qlik to only make calculations based on the expression that you give. So for example, now we have all of this, right? I've selected a product category called baby. What this essentially means is that now the data is filtered only for this particular product category. We could do that by default. That is, we could create a flag in our data set and say, hey, calculate everything for product category name baby. So here, let me add a KPI. I'm going to go into a chart. Here, I'm going to say KPI. And just to show you the difference, I'll add 2. So now we have total sales here. Let me add total sales here as well. And if I remove this, the total sales is 47. Now, if I select one particular category, the total sales for this particular category is 1.43. Good. But by default, I want my calculation to be based on one particular category. That is the category called baby. How do I do that? Let's go back here. In my measure, I delink this. Good. Now I have this. Let's start writing. So set expression first is the aggregate, then is your expression. That is, this is the syntax. Open and close curly braces, open and close angle brackets. The product name English is equal to, I want it to match. I know you're thinking, oh my God, what the hell is this? Well, it's actually pretty simple. I go step by step in the masterclass from a really basic set expression to a super complex one, but you're going to be pros at it. Trust me. It's really easy. Once you know how to write it, it's super easy. So, and here I'm going to say, I want this to be baby. There's a difference between single quotes and double quotes. double quotes is for search, single quotes is for literal values. So in this case, I know that there's a value called baby, so I'm going to put this. And I'm saying right now that, hey, sum of sales, but not for all sales, from the data set that I have, select all products which have a value called baby and only calculate the sum of sales for that. Click on apply. Now you see that this is 1.43 because anyway the selection is made, right? Now I take this away. So you see that this one is still 1.43, but your total sales is 47, right? So if I go back, now it should be 1.43. It's exactly what we want. But your calculation here is automatically based on your set expression. It's only for the category that you want. So now I can change this name and say this one is for my total sales. Voila, this is basically your set expression. Now you could change this. I could go back here, and in this I would take this away and I could say calculate my sales for the year 2023, and I click on apply and I have 26 million. Let's see if that is correct, right? So I'll change the name as well. Let's see if this is correct. So we have 26, we have given the year as 2023. Now when I go back to year here, now this, you know that this is for overall, right? We have made no selections here, no set expression has been written. But if I make the selection here, we see that this is 26, exactly like our set expression calculation. So this is set expression, a brief intro into it. Now go through my other videos, you'll become a pro. Trust me, this set expressions can really elevate your Qlik game. What if I want the set expression to automatically calculate the maximum year? Well, let's go back here. Let's change this. And here I say dollar expansion is equal to max of my field year. So dollar expansion is something we use when you want Qlik to calculate a function. Here I'm saying is equal to maximum of my field year. I could use minimum, I could use maximum. Yeah, different functions. I have all of these in the cheat sheet so that it becomes super easy for you to just copy and paste it. Check it out. Now here I say sum year is equal to dollar expansion max of the year, and here if you see it's already calculated. Qlik has calculated the maximum year, all that I have in my data set, and that is 2023. And if I click on apply, we get the same result. All right, pretty cool, right? So I hope that this was a great intro. I hope that this helps a lot of people, and please check out the links below. It's going to really help you improve your Qlik game. So check all the templates, the masterclass. People are absolutely loving it, and check out the cheat sheet. It's going to really help you guys. Please leave a like. I would super appreciate it if you left a like and commented below. Maybe I'll do a part 2 of it and go even more in depth. Happy clicking till then. Have a good one. Peace.